On the day when President Biden got his 200th federal judge confirmed by the Senate, another flag was found flying over another home of a Supreme Court justice, signifying full support for Donald Trump's attempt to illegally overturn the last presidential election and for the violent horde of Trump supporters who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, just across the street from the workplace of Supreme Court justices. And this second flag was owned by the same Supreme Court justice who got caught last week with the first flag. Last week, the New York Times reported that Justice Samuel Alito, who was appointed by George W. Bush, remember, not Donald Trump, George W. Bush, was caught flying the American flag upside down at his home in suburban Virginia, a short drive from the United States Supreme Court. Today, the New York Times reported that Justice Samuel Alito, who was appointed by George W. Bush, say that again, not Trump, George W. Bush, has been flying another flag at his summer home in New Jersey. That flag says, "Appeal to Heaven." The Times reports this time it was the Appeal to Heaven flag, which, like the inverted U.S. flag, was carried by rioters at the Capitol on January 6th. Also known as the Pine Tree flag, it dates back to the Revolutionary War, but largely fell into obscurity until recent years and is now a symbol of support for former President Donald J. Trump for a religious strand of the Stop the Steal campaign and for a push to remake American government in Christian terms. Justice Alito, who, let me remind you, was appointed by George W. Bush, declined to respond to questions about that flag at his vacation home after blaming his wife for turning their American flag upside down at their other home, telling the New York Times last week, "I had no involvement whatsoever in the flying of the flag. It was briefly placed by Mrs. Alito in response to a neighbor's use of objectionable and personally insulting language on yard signs." Good luck making sense of that. Only in the perversions of Samuel Alito's brain does it make perfect sense that when your neighbor bothers you, your wife, of course, turns your American flag upside down. We have all known that it is an outrage that the most corrupted judge in the history of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, has not recused himself from cases involving Donald Trump and has brought that Donald Trump has brought to the Supreme Court, trying to get immunity for his illegal attempts to overthrow the presidential election. Clarence Thomas's wife supported every one of those illegal attempts by Donald Trump to overturn that election. But now we know Samuel Alito is in full violation of the Judicial Code of Ethics for federal judges that would apply to any other judge, because Samuel Alito should also be recused from any case involving Donald Trump in any way. No member of the United States Senate in history has done more to expose scandal and structural unfairness at the Supreme Court than our next guest. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He chairs the subcommittee on federal courts. He is also the author of The Scheme: How the Right Wing Used Dark Money to Capture the Supreme Court. Senator Whitehouse, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, it wouldn't be just one flag. One flag was bad enough, but here we are again.
Here we are again. It's not enough to be a Supreme Court justice flying one MAGA battle flag at your house. You got to have two houses and fly two MAGA battle flags, one at each house. It is stunning. And it's the kind of thing, as you know, that from anybody else would provoke an investigation. And all we get from Justice Alito are self-serving statements on Fox News, which is a forum in which you can lie with impunity. You can make it up. It's not an official statement that would be subject to sanctions if you didn't tell the truth. And now he won't answer at all about MAGA Battle Flag 2. So it really encapsulates all of the problems that we've had with this rogue Supreme Court and its refusal to accept any rule of law.
The chairman of your Senate Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin, says Justice Alito must recuse himself immediately from cases related to the 2020 election and the January 6th insurrection. He also calls on the Chief Justice to see how this is damaging the court and immediately enact an enforceable code of conduct. Recusal used to be something that you could reasonably rely on Supreme Court justices to use with wisdom. It was rarely used and rarely required, but used often enough that we could see it as something that worked, but not anymore.
No, and one interesting feature of the recusal requirement is that it is a law passed by Congress, specifically applicable to Supreme Court justices. So when they pay no attention to it, they are actually violating statutory law. This is not one of these rules that the Supreme Court or the judicial branch come up with for themselves, where they might say, well, this is just judicial stuff. You legislators, you just run along here. No, this is the law of the land passed by Congress, and they're just flouting it.
Can the Senate Judiciary Committee demand testimony from Justice Alito or Justice Thomas?
They have been very reluctant to, and they wave separation of powers fan dances around to try to prevent us from speaking to them. But I think it has gotten to the point where the Chief Justice is going to have to engage. And I think you'll see some more action on that shortly out of the Judiciary Committee. And I think the Judicial Conference is also can be expected to engage further. That, as you recall, is the panel of senior federal judges that oversees the judicial branch of government and has authority to look into things like whether disclosures were unlawful and willful and whether there is violation of judicial ethics norms.
The reason I kept repeating that George W. Bush appointed Samuel Alito is I fear that too many people can think this is a problem created by Donald Trump. Every Republican president of our lifetimes has appointed someone to at least one justice to the Supreme Court who has done serious damage to the way we live and has tried to do more damage to the way we live, from Clarence Thomas by the first President Bush. And this notion that this was something that has just blossomed during Trump is something that you've worked very hard to expose even before the Trump justices took their seats.
No, you're right. This goes way back. The person responsible for the appointment of Justice Alito was actually Leonard Leo, the operative of the Koch brothers and the creepy billionaires who have been meddling in the court. You remember that Bush originally wanted to appoint his legal counsel, his friend, his fellow Texan conservative woman lawyer to replace Sandra Day O'Connor, Harriet Miers. And he got attacked not by Democrats for that. He got attacked from these far-right billionaires. And he humiliatingly had to withdraw his own legal counsel's nomination. And Leo produced the agreeable justice to the creepy billionaires, none other than Sam Alito.